The next morning brought trouble. Taemin was checking the air recyclers when Captain Lee So-young found him. She was the head of station security, a tough woman who had served in the Galactic Defense Force before coming to Karathi Station. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice was cold and official. Taemin's heart raced, but he kept working. "About what?" "About the alien you found last night. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about." The cameras caught everything. Taemin stopped working and faced her. She was hurt. "I couldn't just leave her there." "Yes, you could have. And you should have. Do you know what she is? Villani. I can see that." So-young pulled out a data pad and showed him an image. It was the woman he had helped, but in the picture she looked different, healthy. Her silver blue skin glowed and her dark eyes were bright with intelligence. "Her name is Nari," So-young said. "She worked as a communication specialist on the Council homeworld. Last month she was caught spreading dangerous lies about an invasion by an extinct enemy species. The Council marked her for deception and ordered her sent to a penal colony." "What kind of lies?" "She claimed the Devourer Collective was returning. You know your history, right? The Devourers were defeated 300 years ago. They're extinct, dead, gone forever." Taemin had learned about the Devourer War in school. The entire galaxy had united to fight an enemy that consumed worlds and enslaved minds. The war lasted 50 years and killed billions, but in the end the united species won. Every child knew the story. "Maybe she really believed it," Taemin said. "It doesn't matter what she believed. She caused panic on 12 different worlds. Trade routes were disrupted. Defense fleets were moved for no reason. Her lies cost lives and credits." So-young put away the data pad. "I'm here to collect her." "Where is she?" Taemin wanted to lie, but he knew it was useless. The cameras had seen him help Nari. They probably tracked him to the maintenance room too. "Lower level. Maintenance section C. Smart choice. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." They walked through the station together. Taemin felt like he was betraying Nari, but what choice did he have? So-young was just doing her job and he was just a mechanic. In the maintenance room, Nari was awake. She had been drawing more pictures on the walls. The same strange ships, the same three-circle symbol, the same warnings. When she saw So-young's uniform, she backed into the corner and shook her head frantically. "It's okay," So-young said in a gentler voice. "I'm not going to hurt you. We're just going to move you to better quarters until the transport arrives." Nari looked at Taemin with betrayal in her eyes. He wanted to explain, but what could he say? That he was sorry? That he had tried to help? As they escorted Nari to the detention center, she kept pointing at her wall drawings. She grabbed Taemin's arm and made urgent gestures toward the outer sections of the station. She was still trying to warn them about something. "She won't give up," So-young said. "That's the problem with true believers. They think they're saving everyone." After Nari was locked away, Taemin could not focus on his work. He kept thinking about her drawings and her desperate attempts to communicate. What if she was not lying? What if she really had discovered something? That afternoon, he was assigned to repair sensors in the station's outer hull. It was dangerous work that required a spacesuit, but Taemin preferred it to working inside. Out here, floating in the void, he could think clearly. The damaged sensors were in Section 7 near the docking bays. According to the work order, they had been hit by debris from a recent asteroid impact. But when Taemin examined them, he found something strange. The damage was not from debris. Someone had deliberately modified the sensors. The changes were subtle but significant. Instead of scanning their assigned areas, the sensors now had blind spots. Big ones. Taemin checked the other sensors in the section. All of them had been modified the same way. The blind spots all pointed in the same direction, toward a region of space that was supposed to be empty. This was not random vandalism. Someone with advanced technical knowledge had carefully planned these modifications. The work was too sophisticated for smugglers or pirates. It looked almost like preparation for something. When he finished the repairs, Taemin did not report what he had found. Instead, he went to find his friend Kim Jinwoo, another mechanic who worked the day shift. Jinwoo was in the cafeteria, eating dinner and complaining about the food. "This stuff tastes like recycled engine oil," he said when Taemin sat down. "Jinwoo, I need to ask you something. Have you noticed anything strange about repair orders lately?" "Strange how?" "Sensors being damaged in patterns. Equipment failing in specific ways." Jinwoo thought about it. "Now that you mention it, yes. I've been getting a lot of work orders for the outer sections, mostly sensor arrays and communication relays. Why?" Taemin told him about the modifications he had found. Jinwoo listened carefully, his expression growing more serious. "That's not good," Jinwoo said when Taemin finished. "If someone is creating blind spots, they're planning something big. The question is who and what. Maybe we should report it to security." Taemin thought about Captain So Young and her dismissal of Nari's warnings. "I don't think they'll believe us. We need more proof." That night, instead of going home, Taemin visited Nari in the detention center. The guards knew him as the mechanic who found her, so they let him through with minimal questions. Nari was sitting on her narrow bed, staring at the wall. When she saw him, she stood up quickly. She was still weak, but seemed stronger than before. Taemin pulled out a data pad and showed her pictures of the modified sensors. Her eyes went wide. She nodded eagerly and pointed at the images, then at herself. "You knew about this?" Taemin asked. She nodded again and began making gestures. She pointed at the sensor modifications, then drew the three-circle symbol in the air. She was connecting the sabotage to whatever she had been trying to warn people about. Taemin felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's recycled air. Someone is preparing for an attack, aren't they? Nari's nod was grim. She pointed at him, then at the door, then made an urgent shooing gesture. She wanted him to leave, to run, but Taemin was not going to run. He was going to find out who was behind this and stop them. Even if nobody believed him, even if it cost him his job. He had always been good at fixing broken things. Now he had to figure out how to fix this before it was too late. As he left the detention center, Taemin did not see the figure watching from the shadows. Administrator Bae Sung-ho had been listening to every word. The lights on Karathi Station flickered again. Park Taemin looked up from his work and sighed. The old mining station needed repairs everywhere, but the company only cared about keeping the drills running. Everything else could wait. Taemin wiped oil from his hands and checked the time. 3 a.m. Most of the station slept, but he worked the night shift fixing whatever broke during the day. It was quiet work and he liked it that way. No supervisors breathing down his neck. No crowds of workers asking him to hurry up. He picked up his toolbox and headed toward the waste disposal sector. Someone had reported strange noises coming from the recycling units. Probably just a jammed motor, but it needed checking. The waste sector smelled terrible. Old food, chemical runoff from the mines, and things Taemin did not want to think about. He pulled on his breathing mask and followed the sound of grinding metal. The recycling unit was working fine. The noise came from somewhere else. Taemin walked deeper into the sector, past rows of containers and disposal chutes. The sound got louder. It was not mechanical. It sounded almost like crying. Behind a stack of broken equipment, Taemin found her. The alien woman was curled up on the floor, shaking. Her skin was silver blue, which meant she was Villani. Taemin had seen a few Villani before. They usually worked as diplomats or entertainers because their voices could make people feel different emotions. This one was different. Her mouth was covered with some kind of metal device. It looked like it had been welded shut. Dark stains covered her face and neck. Blood, Taemin realized. Fresh blood. He knelt down beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" The woman's eyes opened. They were large and dark, filled with pain and fear. She tried to speak, but only muffled sounds came out. She pointed at her mouth, then made frantic gestures with her hands. Taemin looked closer at the metal covering her mouth. It was not just welded shut. It was a punishment device. He had heard about them, but never seen one. The Galactic Council used them on criminals who spread lies or dangerous information. "You're marked," he whispered. "What did you do?" The woman shook her head violently. She pointed at herself, then at her mouth, then made a cutting motion across her throat. Tears ran down her face. Taemin felt sick. The mark was not just over her mouth. Someone had cut out her tongue too. The Villani used their voices for everything. Without her tongue, she was like a bird with broken wings. He should call security. That was the rule. All marked criminals had to be reported immediately. But looking at her pain and fear, Taemin could not bring himself to do it. "I'm going to help you," he said quietly. "But we need to get you somewhere safe first." The woman nodded eagerly. Taemin helped her stand. She was weak and could barely walk. He supported her weight and led her to an abandoned maintenance room deep in the station's lower levels. Nobody went there anymore. Inside the room, Taemin gave her water and some food bars from his lunch. She could not eat much with the metal device, but she managed small sips of water. While she rested, Taemin examined the device more carefully. It was made of biometal designed to bond with living tissue. Removing it would require surgery, but even if he could get it off, her tongue was gone. She would never speak normally again. The woman seemed to understand his thoughts. She pulled out a small piece of metal and began scratching on the floor. Her drawings were rough but clear. She drew ships, big ones with strange shapes. Then she drew planets with X marks over them. Dead planets. Taemin watched as she drew more. A symbol that looked like 3 circles joined together with nothing in the middle. She pointed at the symbol, then at herself, then made an urgent gesture toward the station around them. "You're trying to warn us about something," Taemin said. She nodded and kept drawing. This time she showed the station surrounded by the strange ships. She drew lines from the ships to the station, then scratched out the station completely. "An attack? Someone is going to attack the station?" More nodding. The woman grabbed his arm and pointed at her drawings again. She was desperate for him to understand. Taemin studied the drawings. The ships did not look like anything he knew. The Galactic Council had been at peace for over 200 years. The only enemies were pirates and smugglers, and they used small, fast ships. These looked like warships from an old war. "Who are they?" he asked. The woman drew the 3-circle symbol again, bigger this time. She pointed at it and made a sound that might have been a name, but the metal device made it impossible to understand. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Heavy boots, security patrol. Taemin quickly scattered some tools around to make it look like he was working. He whispered to the woman, "Stay quiet. I'll come back when I can." She grabbed his hand before he could leave. Her grip was strong despite her weakness. She looked into his eyes and nodded once. "A thank you." Taemin slipped out of the room just as 2 security guards rounded the corner. "Working late again, Taemin?" one of them asked. "Cooling system is acting up," he replied, holding up a wrench. "You know how it is." They nodded and continued their patrol. When they were gone, Taemin returned to the maintenance room, but the woman was sleeping. Exhaustion had finally taken her. He looked at her drawings on the floor. Whatever she was trying to tell him, she believed it was important enough to risk her life. The Galactic Council did not give punishment marks lightly. She must have really upset someone powerful. But what if she was not lying? What if she really was trying to warn them? Taemin had always been good at fixing things. Machines made sense to him. They broke in predictable ways and could be repaired with the right tools. People were more complicated, but maybe this woman was like a machine that just needed fixing too. He decided to help her, even if it meant breaking the rules. Sometimes doing the right thing was more important than following orders. As he walked back to his regular duties, Taemin did not notice the small camera in the corner of the waste sector. It had recorded everything. Dr. Choi Hae-jin was studying samples in her lab when Taemin found her the next day. She was the station's xenobiologist, responsible for monitoring alien life forms and understanding their needs. Her lab was filled with strange plants, microscopic creatures, and analysis equipment that hummed quietly. "I need your help with something," Taemin said, showing her the drawings Nari had made. Hae-jin looked up from her microscope, pushing her glasses up her nose. "What are these?" "Drawings made by the Villani woman in detention. The one who was marked for deception." "Ah, yes. Captain So Young told me about her. Said she was spreading panic about some old enemy returning." Hae-jin took the images and studied them carefully. "These symbols are interesting. You recognize them?" "Some of them. This 3-circle design. I've seen it before in old research papers. It's precursor script." Taemin felt his pulse quicken. The precursors were the galaxy's first intelligent species. They had disappeared millions of years ago, leaving behind only ruins and fragments of their language. "What does it mean?" Hae-jin pulled out a thick book and flipped through pages covered with ancient symbols. Precursor script is very difficult to translate. Most of it is still unknown. But this symbol, she pointed to the 3 circles. "I think it means those who consume or the hungry ones." "Devourers," Taemin whispered. "That would make sense. The precursors fought the devourers too, long before humans or any modern species existed. According to legend, the devourers destroyed the precursor civilization completely." Hae-jin studied more of Nari's drawings. These ship designs, they matched descriptions from old Devourer War archives. "And these star patterns?" She paused, checking something on her computer. "These are real star positions." "Current ones, what do you mean?" Your Villani friend isn't drawing from memory or imagination? She's showing specific locations in space. Recent ones. Hyejin looked worried. If these drawings are accurate, someone has been tracking Devourer movement in sectors that are supposed to be empty. Taemin told her about the modified sensors and the blind spots he had discovered. Hyejin's expression grew darker as he explained. This is very serious, she said when he finished. Someone with access to station systems has been preparing for something. And if this Villani woman was trying to warn people, then she was telling the truth and they silenced her for it. Hyejin nodded grimly. We need to decode more of these symbols. If she really discovered evidence of Devourer activity, there might be details here that could help us understand their plans. They worked through the afternoon, comparing Nari's drawings to historical records and precursor translations. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The symbols told a story of ancient enemies returning from dark space, of infiltration and preparation, of a coordinated attack across multiple star systems. Look at this, Hyejin said, pointing to a series of small marks around the ship drawings. These aren't just random scratches. They're dates. Recent dates, sighting reports. More than that. These look like countdown markers, as if she was tracking some kind of schedule. Taemin studied the dates. If Hyejin was right, the pattern showed increasing activity over the past 6 months, all building toward a date that was only days away. We have to tell someone, he said. Who? Captain So Young already dismissed this woman as a liar. Station Administrator Sung Ho cares only about mining quotas. The Galactic Council marked her for deception. What if the Council was wrong? What if someone made them believe she was lying? Hyejin paused in her translation work. You're suggesting conspiracy, infiltration at the highest levels. I'm suggesting that maybe Nari discovered something that certain people didn't want known. Before Hyejin could respond, the lab door chimed. Administrator Bae Sung-ho entered, flanked by 2 security guards. He was a thin man with cold eyes and a perfect uniform that never seemed to wrinkle. Dr. Choi, Mr. Park, he said formally. I understand you've been conducting unauthorized research. Taemin quickly gathered Nari's drawings, but one of the guards stopped him. Leave those, Sung-ho ordered. They're evidence. Evidence of what? Hyejin demanded. Collaboration with a marked criminal, attempting to spread the same dangerous lies that got her punished in the first place. Sung-ho picked up one of the drawings and studied it. For just a moment, something flickered across his face. Recognition, fear? Then his official mask returned. These fantasies about ancient enemies returning are exactly the kind of panic-inducing nonsense the Council wants to prevent. I'm ordering both of you to cease this research immediately. What if she's telling the truth? Taemin asked. She's not. The Devourer Collective was completely destroyed 3 centuries ago. Every military historian agrees. Every Council archive confirms it. This woman is either delusional or deliberately spreading lies for unknown purposes. Sung-ho moved closer to Taemin. You're a good mechanic, Park. Don't throw away your career for a criminal's fantasies. As Sung-ho turned to leave, Taemin noticed something that made his blood run cold. Behind the administrator's left ear was a small scar, perfectly circular and barely visible. It matched exactly what Nari had drawn in several of her pictures. When they were alone again, Hyejin whispered, Did you see that scar? She drew it. Nari drew that exact mark in her warnings about infiltrators. What does it mean? Taemin thought about everything they had learned. The modified sensors, the countdown dates, the precursor symbols, and now Sung-ho's scar. It means we're in more danger than we thought. And it means Nari was right about everything. That evening, Taemin visited Nari again. This time he brought a simple drawing tablet that she could write on. When he showed her an image of Sung-ho's scar, her reaction was immediate and violent. She dropped the tablet and backed away, shaking her head frantically. She picked up the tablet and drew quickly, a circle with lines radiating from it. Then she drew the same symbol on the side of a head behind the ear. Next to it, she drew a Devourer ship. The connection was clear. The scar marked someone as being under Devourer control. Taemin felt sick. If Sung-ho was compromised, how many others were? How deep did this infiltration go? Nari grabbed his arm and drew one more symbol. A clock with its hands pointing to midnight. Tomorrow. Whatever the Devourers were planning, it was happening tomorrow. As Taemin left the detention center, he made a decision. He was going to help Nari escape, even if it meant becoming a criminal himself. She was the only one who knew the full truth, and tomorrow might be their last chance to stop whatever was coming. He just hoped it wouldn't be too late. Taemin found Jinwoo and Heejin in the maintenance bay at midnight. They had agreed to meet after his shift ended, but now that the moment was here, he wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. "Are you sure about this?" Jinwoo asked. "Breaking a marked criminal out of detention is serious. We could all end up in prison." "If we don't do this, we might all end up dead," Taemin replied. He showed them the countdown symbol Nari had drawn. "Whatever is happening, it's happening today." Heejin checked her equipment. "I've been monitoring communication channels all evening. There's been unusual activity on encrypted frequencies. Ships moving in dark space. Something big is definitely coming." "The question is whether we can trust her," Jinwoo said. "What if this is all an elaborate lie? What if she's working for enemies of the Council?" Taemin thought about Nari's pain, her desperation to communicate, her tears when she drew the warnings. "She's not lying. I can feel it. Feelings aren't evidence. Sometimes they're all we have." They spent an hour planning the escape route. Taemin knew the station's maintenance tunnels better than anyone. Jinwoo could create power failures to disable security cameras. Heejin had access to medical supplies and could treat Nari's injuries once they reached safety. The detention center was heavily guarded, but it was also old and poorly maintained. Like everything else on Karathi Station, security had been built cheap and fixed with patches. At 2 a.m, they made their move. Jinwoo triggered a cascade failure in the power grid that shut down lights in half the station. Emergency power kicked in, but it only covered essential systems. The detention center's cameras went dark. Taemin crawled through a ventilation shaft that connected to the detention center's lower level. The shaft was barely wide enough for his shoulders, and twice he had to stop and carefully remove bolts that blocked his path. When he reached Nari's cell, she was waiting. Somehow she had known he was coming. She had gathered the few belongings they had given her and stood ready by the door. The lock was electronic, controlled by the main security system, but it also had a manual override hidden behind a maintenance panel. Taemin had installed these locks himself 3 years ago, and he knew their weaknesses. "Can you walk?" he whispered as the door opened. Nari nodded, though she was obviously still weak. She pointed at her mouth, then made a cutting gesture. She wanted him to remove the metal device that sealed her lips. "Not here. Too dangerous. When we're safe." They made their way through the maintenance tunnels slowly. Nari had to stop frequently to rest, and twice Taemin had to carry her when the passages became too narrow to walk upright. Emergency alarms began sounding throughout the station. Their escape had been discovered. This way, Taemin led them toward the old mining section, where abandoned tunnels connected to the outer hull. If they could reach Jinwoo's hiding place, they might be safe. But as they emerged from the tunnels, they found security guards waiting for them. Too many guards. And they were moving with perfect coordination, as if they knew exactly where the escapes would appear. "Stop right there," Captain So-Young ordered. She was leading the security team, but something was wrong. Her eyes looked different. Distant. Cold. Nari made a sound through her sealed mouth. It was barely audible, but it had a strange quality that made Taemin's teeth ache. The guards stopped moving for a moment, looking confused. "Interesting," So-Young said. Her voice had changed too. It sounded mechanical, emotionless. The subject retained some capability despite the tongue removal. "Captain, what's wrong with you?" Taemin asked. "Nothing is wrong. Everything is proceeding according to plan." More security personnel appeared from other corridors. Nearly half the station's guard force was surrounding them. But their movements were too precise, too coordinated. They acted like parts of a machine instead of individual people. Nari made the sound again, stronger this time. Several guards stumbled, holding their heads as if in pain. The sound seemed to disrupt whatever was controlling them. "Fascinating," So-Young continued in that mechanical voice. "Neural harmonics can interfere with the control implants. This explains why the subject required special handling." "Control implants?" Taemin stepped protectively in front of Nari. "Did you really think the Devourer Collective was destroyed? Death is just another form of evolution. We learn to infiltrate instead of conquer. to control instead of consume. Efficiency improved by 93%. The truth hit Taemin like a physical blow. The Devourers had not been destroyed. They had adapted. Instead of attacking openly, they had learned to take control of their enemies from within. Nari grabbed his arm and pointed urgently toward a wall panel. Behind it was the station's main power coupling. If they could overload it, the resulting explosion would disable the control systems. She wants us to destroy the power grid, Taemin whispered to Jinwoo and Hyejin. That would shut down life support too, Hyejin replied. Better than letting them take over the galaxy. So Young heard them talking. Resistance is inefficient. Surrender will result in minimal discomfort during the assimilation process. But some of the guards were fighting the control. The ones who had been affected by Nari's sound were shaking their heads, trying to clear their thoughts. A few were looking around in confusion as if waking up from a dream. The implants are weakening, one guard said in his own voice. I remember now. They put something in our heads during the last medical checkup. Nari made the sound again, this time sustaining it longer. It was not quite music and not quite speech, but it had power. More guards began to shake off the control. Countermeasures required, So Young said. She reached for something behind her ear. Taemin tackled her before she could activate whatever device she was reaching for. They fought on the floor while Jinwoo and Hyejin helped the freed guards understand what was happening. The entire station leadership is compromised, one of the guards said. Administrator Sung-ho, half the security force, most of the engineering supervisors. How many others? Hyejin asked. Unknown, but if they're preparing for something big. Alarms began sounding from the outer sensors. Ships were approaching the station. Lots of them. Nari pointed urgently toward the communication center. She wanted to send a warning to other stations, other worlds. But first, they had to survive whatever was coming. Through the station's windows, they could see lights in the darkness of space. Ships emerging from nowhere, their designs matching exactly what Nari had drawn. Ancient, terrible, and moving with deadly purpose. The Devourer Collective had returned, and their invasion was beginning. We need to warn everyone, Taemin said. Nari nodded and made another sound. This one was different, more complex. It seemed to say that warning others was not enough. They had to fight back, and for the first time since this started, Taemin smiled. Because if there was one thing humans were good at, it was fighting back against impossible odds. The Devourer ships surrounded Karathi Station like predators circling wounded prey. Through the observation windows, Taemin could see dozens of them, their dark hulls covered with strange organic growths that pulsed with sickly light. Communication center is this way, Jinwoo said, leading their group through corridors filled with panicking civilians. Half the station's population was running toward the escape pods, while the other half was trying to understand what was happening. Administrator Sung-ho's voice echoed through the station speakers, calm and reassuring. Please remain in your quarters. The approaching vessels are scheduled mining ships. There is no cause for alarm. He's still trying to keep people from escaping, Hyejin said. Nari made urgent gestures toward the communication array. She wanted to override Sung-ho's lies with the truth. But when they reached the communication center, they found it sealed and guarded by controlled security personnel. We need another way, Taemin said. Through the center's windows, they could see the Devourer ships moving closer. Some were docking with the station's outer ports. Others were positioning themselves around the mining platforms. They're not attacking, Jinwoo observed. They're taking control. Nari grabbed Taemin's arm and pointed at the mining equipment below them. The massive drills and processing units that extracted minerals from asteroids. She drew quick symbols on the dusty floor. The mining equipment connected to the station's power core, then an explosion. You want to use the mining equipment as a weapon? She nodded eagerly. If they could overload the mining lasers and drilling systems, they could create an explosion large enough to destroy the Devourer ships. But someone would have to stay behind to trigger the sequence manually. The lights flickered and went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Through the speakers, Sung-ho's voice changed to that mechanical tone they had heard from So Young. All personnel will report to assembly areas for processing. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. They're taking over the entire station, Hyejin whispered. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. The controlled guards were searching for them. Tamian made a decision. Get to the escape pods, all of you. What about you? Jinwoo asked. Someone has to stay and trigger the mining equipment. If those ships leave here, they'll attack other stations, other worlds. This might be our only chance to stop them. I'm staying too, Jinwoo said firmly. And me, added Hyejin. Nari shook her head violently. She pointed at herself, then at the escape pods, then made a negative gesture. She was not leaving either. You have to go, Taemin told her. You're the only one who knows the full truth about their plans. The galaxy needs that information. Nari pulled out the drawing tablet Hyejin had given her and wrote quickly, My voice silent. Need yours to speak truth. Before anyone could argue further, the door exploded inward. Controlled guards poured into the room, moving with inhuman coordination. Behind them came Administrator Sung-ho, his eyes now completely black. Inefficient, Sung-ho said in that mechanical voice. Escape attempts delay the inevitable. Nothing's inevitable, Taemin replied. Nari stepped forward and removed something from around her neck. It was a small device that Hyejin had built earlier, designed to amplify her harmonic abilities. She placed it against her throat and began to make sounds. This time the effect was incredible. Every controlled person in the room stopped moving and grabbed their heads in agony. The neural implants that enslaved them began to spark and smoke. Impossible, Sung-ho said, his voice shifting between mechanical control and human confusion. The tongue was severed. Vocal capabilities eliminated. But Nari was not using her tongue. She was using harmonic resonance from deep in her throat, amplified by Hyejin's device. The sound waves traveled through the station's metal structure, affecting every controlled person aboard. Through the speakers, they could hear controlled guards throughout the station crying out in pain and confusion as the implants failed. People were waking up from the mental slavery, remembering who they really were. Sung-ho fought against the harmonic disruption, his face twisting with effort. Must complete the plan. He reached for a control panel and activated something. Through the windows, they could see the mining equipment beginning to move. But instead of overloading to create an explosion, it was being reconfigured as a massive gravitational weapon. He's turning our mining equipment against us, Jinwoo shouted over the noise. Nari's harmonic assault was weakening. The device was overheating, and she was exhausted from the effort. But her disruption had freed enough people to give them a fighting chance. Captain So-young burst into the room, but this time her eyes were clear and human. The implants are failing throughout the station, she reported. But the Devourer ships are starting to emit their own control signals. We don't have much time. Taemin looked at the mining controls. If he could reverse what Sung-ho had done, he could still create the explosion they needed. But the sequence would take several minutes and he would not be able to escape in time. Go, he told the others. Get to the escape pods. Warn the galaxy. We're not leaving you, Jinwoo said. You have to. This is bigger than one station. Bigger than all of us. Nari approached the mining controls and pointed at herself. Then at Taemin. She was not leaving either. You can't help with this. It's too technical. She smiled sadly and pointed at her throat device, then at the controls. She had one more harmonic burst left in her. Enough to overload not just the implants, but the entire control system. It would kill her, but it would also ensure the explosion happened. No, Taemin said firmly. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. But Nari had already made her choice. She activated the throat device one final time, directing all its power into the station's control systems. Every electronic device in the mining section began to spark and smoke. The overload spread through the power grid like fire through dry wood. Mining lasers fired randomly. Drilling equipment spun out of control. And the main reactor began an unstoppable cascade failure. Nari collapsed. The throat device destroyed and her vocal cords burned beyond repair. But her sacrifice had worked. The mining equipment was now a massive bomb with a timer counting down in minutes. Taemin picked up Nari and ran for the escape pods with the others. Behind them, they could hear the Devourer ships trying to disconnect from the station as their sensors detected the impending explosion. In the escape pod bay, chaos reigned. Freed station personnel were fighting with the few remaining controlled guards while civilians scrambled for safety. This pod is damaged, Hyejin shouted, checking the nearest escape vehicle. Here, So-young called from another pod. This one's functional. As they strapped themselves in, Taemin looked at Nari. She was barely conscious, but she was alive. "We did it," he told her. "Your warning saved everyone." She could not speak, could never speak again. But her eyes were bright with satisfaction. The escape pod launched just as the mining equipment exploded. The blast was visible from several star systems away, a nova of light that consumed the Devourer fleet in Karathi Station in one brilliant moment. Later, safe aboard a rescue ship, they watched news reports of similar explosions across the galaxy. Nari's harmonic disruption had been transmitted to other stations through subspace communication. Everywhere, controlled personnel had awakened from their slavery in time to fight back. The Devourer Collective's return had lasted exactly 12 hours. Their strategy of infiltration and control, refined over 3 centuries, had been defeated by one alien woman's refusal to stay silent and one human mechanic's refusal to abandon someone in need. Nari would never speak again, but through Taemin and the others, her voice would be heard across the galaxy. The truth she had tried so desperately to communicate had finally been understood, and sometimes that was enough.